I'd also like to announce that Real Kentucky on February 10th will be having a 7-year itch with Marilyn Monroe and Tom Newell from Kentucky, and that will take place on Thursday, February 10th at 7 p.m., and it is free, and we do provide popcorn. Center Scene, which will be on February 17th, the following week, at Thursday at 5 p.m. The topic will be Romancing the Vine, and we'll have wine tasting, and that is free to members and $5 for non-members. Also that same evening, so if you want to go to the center scene and then come over later to see the cabaret, we're having a night with Lady Day, the music of Billie Holiday. We're having Sandra Sissy Williams, who will be giving a critically acclaimed tribute to the legendary Billie Holiday, and that is just going to be a wonderful evening. We're really looking forward to that. That will be after the center scene at 7 p.m., and admission is pay what you can. Also, if any of you have children or if you know anyone that has kids, we'd like to let them know that we have Super Saturdays going on throughout the year. Our first one is March 11th, and it will be tying into our temporary exhibit that we'll be having called Saving Kentucky's Treasures. The Super Saturday is titled Saving Your Treasures, and it's for children ages 5 to 10, and that includes performances and hands-on activities, and that is also free. It lasts from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. I also would like to announce that this is Brown Bag History, and we do know that people bring their lunches. You can also order one through us if you'd like to take a brochure. It has registration on the back, and you can order a lunch through us. It'll be $6. Next month, in March, when we'll be holding Kentucky Women in Politics, will be our next topic, we're going to try and have tables on one side of the room so people can be a little bit more comfortable when they eat. So if you want to remember that and maybe order a lunch with us, that would be great. Today we have Dr. Anne Butler, who will be speaking on African American military experiences in honor of Black History Month. Unfortunately, the panel was not able to make it. They had to cancel. So Dr. Butler has graciously donated her time to us today and is going to be talking about Camp Nelson and beyond. So I'm going to introduce actually Vicki Middleswarth, who can tell you a little bit more about Dr. Butler.
For you. I think it's on. I wanted to mention one other event that is coming up too, which you may have already heard of, but just a reminder that next week, Thursday evening, Friday, and Saturday morning, we have a wonderful symposium planned about the civil rights movement in Kentucky. And we have information about that, the schedule, which includes lectures and discussions and oral history and even a theater presentation at our information desks, and we can also tell you who to call if you want to sign up for that, because we'd love to see you here for that as well. I have the somewhat daunting task of introducing Dr. Anne Butler to you. I told her that her resume really wore out my printer this morning when I printed it out, because she has a wonderful list of credits to her name. She is originally from Kentucky, from Lincoln County, but she's been away for a while and returned to us about 4 years ago to become the director of CESCA, the Center of Excellence for the Study of African Americans, which is up at Kentucky State University. And in that capacity has planned and implemented a wide range of research projects and exhibit projects and discussions both here in Frankfurt and around the state. She previously taught and held some administrative positions at Kansas State University, so she's staying with those states that have K's in them, I guess. She earned her PhD in Curriculum and Policy Studies with an emphasis on race and gender. And her resume, as I mentioned, has pages and pages of publications and presentations and exhibits and activities that she has been involved with over the years. One that I want to point out to you today, which particularly qualifies her to address this topic of Black Kentuckians in the Civil War, is a project that she was involved with a few years ago with a number of individuals and state agencies, including the Historical Society and the Heritage Council and the State Fair Board, to research and present an exhibit called Kentucky African Americans in the Civil War, a Defining Moment. That exhibit was shown at overriding theme for Brown Bag History this year is turning points in history. And we've talked about this, and we think that Anne's talk today represents a turning point in more ways than one. The Civil War was the first time that African Americans were mustered in and recognized as soldiers by the United States government. African Americans were involved in conflicts in American history previous to that. But the Civil War really was a turning point in military history and in African American history, and Anne's going to be talking about that. But perhaps as important, the kind of research that is being done to uncover these stories that previously were not seen by any of us is sort of a turning point in historiography, in the study of history. And I think that's the other thing Anne's going to be talking about. We may raise as many questions today as we provide answers, because what you will find out is that there are a lot of stories that remain to be told. And that's one of Anne's goals, I think, in her professional career, is to uncover some of these stories and help us to see people in history who have been left out in the past. So without further ado, I know you came to hear Anne Butler. Here she is.
Thank you, Vicki, for that wonderful introduction. I'd like to say good morning, I guess it's high noon now, to each of you, and I'm real glad that you came out today to give some time to focus and reflect on a topic that I think is not only important, but has some sense of urgency to it. You will discover, as Vicki has mentioned, that today's program will not consist of the panel as originally conceived. I had located two lieutenant colonels, one a female and one a retired colonel, that I thought would have just been such a wonderful experience to talk about the African American military experience here. But I learned that there were schedule conflicts, and so our original conception was to play on the theme of the National African American History Month theme for 2000, which is Heritage and Horizons, the African American Legacy and Challenges for the 21st Century. And we intended to localize that topic to look at the military experience of Kentucky African Americans, and thought that that would achieve several objectives for us. One would be that it would highlight the need for research related to the military experiences of Kentucky African Americans, and would enable us to make an appeal for more collection development in this area. And we decided also that we would profile some Kentucky and Kentucky State University African Americans within a military context. And thirdly, that we would have a general discussion of the current state of affairs related to the bigger picture of African Americans in the military. For around the time we were conceptualizing the program, news reports were being made about the release of the Department of Defense's latest study on race relations in the military. With such an ambitious agenda, you can perhaps relate to why I called Vicki and said, "Can't do it." The other two people are not going to be able to show, and the topic is much too big for me. I'm not a military historian, nor have I ever seen active duty. I did spend 25 years living in Manhattan, Kansas, and to the west of us, about 16 miles, was the Fort Riley military reservation, and there was constant boom, boom, booms from their firing exercises that let you know they were very alive and active. But what I'm going to do instead today is just to point out some main thoughts about the Camp Nelson experience here in Kentucky, for it is a story with not just local, statewide significance, it has national significance as well. And I'd like to let you know, when I talk about historical experiences, I speak of history as a record of change, The history of the Civil War, to me, was more than a compilation of military strategies and battles won. It perhaps was one of the major turning points that changed American democracy. And so, more so than of focusing on battles and great leaders and so on, I like to take a look at the impact of the war on different populations, women and children, for instance, people of color, civilians as well. What I also like to focus on is how people write about the Civil War, and when it gets played out on the national stage, how it still reflects the national conscience. But what makes that period interesting and pertinent to our own lives, I think, is how it not only changed America, but it changed race relations, it changed politics and economic development. Some of these changes were positive and some were negative, yet all of them affect Americans living now on the dawn of the 21st century. And I think such has been the experience of African Americans in the military. Some of the experiences they had were quite positive, some were quite not negative. But I think when we look at it from a balanced perspective, we can see how much better off the country is, and that African Americans are for having had that experience. I think of history also from an understanding that change does not simply happen. It has causes that preceded certain events and consequences that follow them. Such was the case with the Civil War. Such was the case with the experiment of sorts that went on at Camp Nelson. But in the center of the changes are human actors, strong and weak, male and female, rich and poor, black and white, brown and yellow. And often these people are coming from real different places and backgrounds. And so we can see that not only does history shape the lives of ordinary people, but ordinary people in turn shape history. You may very well be aware that Camp Nelson is located in Jessamine County, about 12 miles south of Lexington. In 1862, preparations for locating a camp in Jessamine County began. By 1863, the camp was fully functional. It served as a major supply depot for the Army of the Ohio and the Cumberland. It was not until 1864 that we began to see the admissions of African Americans into the war effort in Kentucky. And so by the end of 1864, there were, 2 cavalry units, 3 heavy artillery units, and about 15 infantry units. The Army continued taking African American men in after April of 1865 because it was a way to provide them with freedom. You know that in Kentucky, enslaved people were not freed by the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. So that it really was not until December 1865 that those people who had not joined the effort to fight for the Union achieved their freedom. The entry of African Americans into the Camp Nelson setting was not without difficulties. Officially, some 23,000 men in the state volunteered for Union service, and about 10,000 of those ended up being at Camp Nelson. There was very little preparation of attitudes to get people ready for this dramatic change that was going to take place. And so, as one might expect, a lot of human conflict played out with that initial entry. In June of 1863, the U.S. colored field. It was the the fourth U.S. colored field, heavy artillery, located in Columbus, Kentucky, was the first to organize with African Americans from Tennessee and Kentucky. The last to organize was the 125th U.S. Colored Infantry, which was organized starting between February and June of 1865 in Louisville. Kentucky, as I mentioned, provided 2 cavalry units, the 5th and the 6th, and these units both saw heavy duty in the Battle of Saltville and one at the Battle of Petersburg as well. The 17 infantry regiments that were located saw duty out of state. However, most of their early experience was confined to garrison duty around the state in such places as Camp Nelson, Louisville, even Little Crab Orchard, Kentucky, in my home county, Danville, Camp Wildcat, Smithland, and Louisa, Lexington, Harrisburg, Orangeburg, and Ghent, Kentucky also were sites where these soldiers were placed. Not all of Kentucky's USCT were confined to the boundaries of the Commonwealth, and some saw action in such places as Union City, Tennessee, Fort Donelson, Tennessee, several sites in Virginia and North Carolina as well. Thomas Speed, a Union officer and Kentuckian from Louisville, described in a letter to his wife written in February of 1865 the fighting ability of Kentucky African Americans during the assault on Fort Fisher, North Carolina. He wrote, and I quote, "There is no division of Negro troops. There is a division of Negro troops here, a great many of them from Kentucky. You must not turn up your nose when I say they fight splendidly. I saw them tried yesterday, and our regiment saw it, and they all acknowledge that we have to give it up to them. These men will fight." On April the 9th, 1865, the 109th, 114th, 16th, and 17th USIs were present at Appomattox during the surrender of General Robert E. Lee. Following the war, some of Kentucky's USCT units did not immediately return home. Some were in Texas as part of the American buildup of intended to discourage French operations in Mexico. With the end of the war, though, martial law was still in effect within the Commonwealth. Units and duties across Kentucky, units saw duty across Kentucky until December of 1867, when the 125th USCI was mustered out, thus becoming the last United States colored troop unit to be mustered out of the Army. Now, many of these men stayed in the Army and became organized into what was the 9th and 10th Cavalry and the 24th and 25th Infantry. Those regiments are commonly referred to as Buffalo Soldiers. Many of them were sent west to aid in a variety of functions, mostly to help quell some of the unrest that was being experienced as Native American people tried to hold on to their lands. One might ask, how was it that these men and women became engaged in the Union Army? There were, in fact, people who were doing recruiting here. You may be well aware of the efforts that men like Frederick Douglass were making nationally, trying to recruit African Americans for the war effort. And some of that activity spilled into Kentucky, and the men soon learned that if they could make it to a Union camp, then they would be able to gain service duty and ultimately their freedom. At this point, I'd like to tell you a little bit about some of the men, and I have a couple of overheads that I'm going to show you. Betsy, if you would help me with Alan Allensworth.
Top left.
I think maybe we'll just go with that portrait of him, because I doubt if that newspaper ad is going to be visible enough.
Lord.
Allensworth was a slave from Louisville, Kentucky, who ran away around the latter part of 1862, early 1863. He made an escape successfully in Cincinnati, stayed in Ohio for a while, ultimately decided to join the Union effort and came back into Louisville and was mustered into the service. He spent 3 years from 1864 to 1867, and then he was mustered out. He became a minister and traveled around to several different places in Kentucky, speaking to the spiritual needs of the newly freed people. But by 1886, he was back into the Army and served as a chaplain for many years. Allensworth became such a prolific speaker and mediator of conflict between some of the black and white units that he did some writing following his military experience, and so we know a bit more about what he experienced and what the typical experience was for enslaved men. In 1890, he was in Louisville recruiting black soldiers to go back into the Army, and so there was a newspaper write-up about him in the Louisville Journal. And one of the things that he pointed out that I wanted to share with you, he said the colored people make good soldiers, and they are they are deployed around the country. But one of the problems that he had with the assignment of duties was that African American men were not being trained for combat. They were being put more into service-oriented regiments and tasks. And so Allensworth wanted to see that changed. That change, however, did not take place for many, many years. As you are well aware, when African Americans were first employed or mustered in for duty in World War I, many of their activities were service-related. Another Kentuckian who did see duty in World War I and made somewhat of a heroic reputation for himself was the man who presided over Kentucky State University for some 32 years, Rufus B. Atwood. This is a picture of him with some of his fellow soldiers during World War I. He saw duty in the French theater. This is a young picture of Atwood again in uniform, but you can see that on the 18th of the 10th of November 1918. You can read that better than me. I'm going to have to step out from behind the podium, but a shell struck the house in which the switchboard was being operated at Point Amosun. Sergeant Rufus B. Atwood rendered valuable assistance in reconstructing the switchboard and connecting new lines under heavy shell fire. After repairs were made from the first explosion, there were two to follow, which completely wrecked the switchboard room and tore out all of the lines which were newly fixed. Sergeant Atwood was left alone, and he established a new switchboard and the same connections they had at first. The coolness with which he went about his work and the initiative he took in handling the situation justifies his being mentioned in orders. We found that excerpt about Atwood in the book From Slavery to Freedom, first published by John Hope Franklin about 1965 or so.
Did you say he was a president of the college?
Yeah, he was president of Kentucky State University from 1929 to 1961, or two. Can I have the next one, Betsy? This picture is of Lieutenant James McCullen. He was, this article about him appeared in the Kentucky Thoroughbred October of 1943, and in that issue he was listed as missing in action in a scrap in Sicily, but we now know that that information is not exactly correct. McCullen came to Kentucky State University having attended West Paducah Vocational College or Industrial College in 1938, and he was a model student at the university, acquiring a reputation for being good in athletics, academics, and extracurricular activities. Upon graduating in 1942, he immediately enlisted in the Army Air Corps and was assigned to the training school at Tuskegee, where he earned his wings and was commissioned as second lieutenant in the famous 99th Pursuit Squadron. As you well know, that squadron was presided over by Benjamin O. Davis. And Benjamin Davis has written an autobiography, and we can learn quite a bit about the treatment of these men and their accomplishment in spite of the treatment in that biography. But that unit was activated in March of 1941. It was the only black combat flying unit in the United States Air Corps, and they were in service from 41 to 43 on the continental side of the United States, and then ultimately they went to join the war effort in France. And in June, they weren't very experienced with flying, but in June of 1943, McCullen and another pilot accidentally collided as they were taking off for some squadron exercise, and he was killed instantly. There is another picture of McCullen back in the back of the room. The other person that you will recognize the name, who was a K-Stater, a former K-Stater seeing military duty, was Whitney Moore Jr. Young was from Simpsonville, Kentucky. He was born on the 31st of July, 1921, and he died in Lagos, Nigeria in March of 1971, an accidental drowning while attending a summit meeting in Nigeria. But Whitney joined the military during World War I as a non-commissioned officer in a black army company stationed overseas. He became a mediator between black soldiers and their white superiors. As a result, Young, who had thought he would leave the Army and go on to medical school, realized that he could move blacks beyond Jim Crow institutions and practices. He later re-enlisted in the Army Reserve on July 22nd of 1942, worked as a mechanic with the War Department Signal Service at the Lexington Signal Depot. He was reassigned in October of 1942 and became a junior repairman trainee and an assistant radio mechanic. On the 6th of May, 1943, he was ordered to active duty, where he was accepted into specialized training. Throughout Young's Army career, he had hoped that the Army would send him to medical school. But that did not occur, and so he began to realize his true calling. He became a mediator between the black soldiers and their white superiors, and this set the course for his future endeavors. One of the principal turning points, I think, in military history as it relates to African American experiences was in 1948 when President Truman passed the executive order that shifted the military from a segregated to an integrated institution. Now, it was a while before the effects of that effort were seen, probably not for another 5 more years. But truly, that act is one of those that changed the country. And in that instance, the military took the lead in integration quite a number of years before public schools and other places of accommodations were integrated. There are many people who feel that the military actually mirrors social change rather than forces mirrors social change in the rest of the country rather than forcing social change. Others feel, of course, that the military is on the leading edge. I think I find myself in that category. At present, of the 1.5 million or so in active duty personnel, about 20% of those are African American, and of that 20%, about 40% of the jobs that African Americans hold are managerial. Some 16 or 17% of African Americans are commissioned officers, and then 10 or 12% are non-commissioned officers. So we can truly see and understand how it is that the military, when it goes into other countries, such as Bosnia, for instance, actually models that people can, in fact, get along across racial and ethnic differences. And so of that, I think we all need to be very, very proud. I'm going to stop at this point and see if you have any questions. Although Vicki, through sublimation, agreed to answer all the questions that you have. Then I would invite you to take a look at the pictures around the wall. The large one over here with the Navy insignia on the hat, you may not recognize, but we're very proud of that picture. It is of Dr. Henry Chaney, who graduated from Kentucky State in 1936. He was from Henderson, Kentucky. At Kentucky State, was very active. He wrote for and was editor of the school newspaper. He ran track, was a member of the debate team, sang with the campus quartet. And then after graduating in 36, he eventually was asked to teach, to return to the university following his military duty as a teacher, and stayed there until he retired in 1982. During World War following World War I, he married Mrs. Ora Mae Cheney, a 1935 graduate of Kentucky State. He is known best for his research and roles as a teacher, author, and lecturer extraordinary. We have some signs identifying the other people. I won't tell you about them, but some of them we are unable to identify and bring these out in the hopes that some of you might recognize some of the people and be able to help us identify them. Well, I thank you for your attention.
I would like to announce that Dr. Butler has also put together a wonderful bibliography that we have in the back of the room in case anyone is interested in doing a little more research on your own African-American military people. Also, we have a mailing list in case anyone's interested in signing up to find out about what we have coming up events here. And please join us next month, March 1st, Wednesday, again, same bat time, same bat channel, for Dr. Carol Crow-Carico. It's a tongue twister, her name. We talk about Kentucky women in politics. Thank you very much.
One of the most traumatic things that I experienced from the military is that I was in the Marine Corps in Korea. And we went through some traumatic times there. The most traumatic thing is when I came back home, I could not go into a restaurant to eat. It was very traumatic for me. And it's had an effect on me ever since.
Yeah, that was quite a horrid past that, realizing that these men went overseas, fought in every war, but were not able to enjoy just basic opportunities and privileges here in the country without a lot of struggle.
What do you do now? You're retired from what? I believe you've done pretty well. But that trauma, see, I have a hard time relating to that.
The trauma's on the inside.
It's on the inside, it doesn't come out.
You got to heal.
Well, now you can let it
But I
go.
don't have any bitterness. And then, I'm confident because that was part of this.
Well, we're all fortunate that you don't have.
Yeah.
We're all fortunate.
One of the things that that Department of Defense report that I mentioned alluded to was how black and white see race experiences through different lenses. And part of what they found was whites talk to whites, blacks talk to blacks, Hispanics talk to Hispanics. And that puts us in a position where when issues come up, we all fall short of understanding because we don't carry on dialogues with each other about these matters in such a way that we get some sense of what it's like to step in another person's shoes. And so I'm hopeful that one of the great benefits of African American History Month is that dialogue. There is an opportunity to dialogue about issues that we don't get to talk about. Those of us in Kentucky are somewhat fortunate in that the genesis for African American History Month might well have had its start here. Carter G. Woodson enrolled in Berea College in 1897, graduated 1903, just before the Day Law went into effect. He left here, studied at the University of Chicago and at Harvard, acquiring a PhD in history. And he started in 1926 this thing of having a week to recognize African American accomplishments. And part of why he did so was because he himself had gone all the way through the educational pipeline without ever learning anything about himself or his own heritage. Carter G. Woodson understood the transformative power of education. And so I think that as we pause and reflect on the contributions of African Americans during February and other people at other times during the year, then we have a chance to engage in dialogue and help foster the kinds of changes that can be brought about through education. Yes.
Could you tell us anything about the young woman's experience?
She's one of the ones that we have no identifying information on at all. In 1941, Anna Clark graduated from Kentucky State University. Was it 41, Betsy? Along with Whitney Young. And she, John Trowbridge, tells this story so well. Anna Clark's commencement speaker had been Mary Bethune, and Mary Bethune was at that time recruiting around the country for black women to join the WACs. And at Kentucky State, she extolled that she wanted to leave with one black WAC. Ultimately, Anna Clark from Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, heeded that call and became a second lieutenant and was really at the crest of a promising military career when she died very prematurely, having developed appendicitis and infection set in. She was stationed out at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and did not survive that illness. You have to sit here until our time is up. Thank you.